In our previous video, we detailed how to read a pattern, what it consists of, and with this next video, we will learn how to place the pattern pieces on fabric, and we'll actually be cutting out the fabric. So if you did follow the link in my description of the previous video and you actually purchased the pattern piece, please follow along with me. I have laid down the pattern pieces on the fabric loosely. I didn't do it according to the diagram on the pattern piece. Because I'm working with a smaller size, the pattern pieces are a bit smaller, so I could fit in a little bit more. I have laid down the fabric as per the pattern piece with the fold at the end of the table. So the grain line of the fabric runs parallel with the fold of the fabric, so which makes it a bit easier. So all pattern pieces are laid according to the grain line. As you can see, this waistband pattern piece is also with the grain line. So next I will show you how to properly pin the fabric pieces so that they can stay nice and secure and that there's no warping. So to properly pin the pattern piece to the fabric, I make sure when I actually pin them to the fabric, I pin them parallel to the edge of the fabric, as close as possible to the edge. Depending on the weight of the fabric, you'll determine how many pins you need. The lighter the fabric, I'd suggest a bit more pins, just to avoid any warping. So I'll continue this right through with every pattern, and then we can start cutting. So I finished pinning the pattern pieces to my fabric, and we need to start cutting. So we have two options. We could either use a normal fabric scissors, which is perfectly fine, or for a quicker, more accurate and easier process, we could use a rotary cutter. So this is just a circular blade where we could then choose the options whether we want to cut soft fabric or harder fabric, or if it's something in between, we could leave it in the middle. So with this, we just basically pull back. As you press, the safety guard will pull back and it'll cut. So you will then just go according to the edge and cut really easily. But for the purposes of this video, I'll be using the fabric scissors, because with the rotary cutter, you do need a self-healing mat to cut on. Firstly, the blade will damage whatever surface you're cutting on, and it will also dull the blade. But like I said, cutting with the normal fabric scissors is perfectly fine. Let's get cutting. So my fabric pieces have been cut, and I still kept the pattern pieces pinned to the fabric so that I can just remember which piece is which piece. As you become a bit more experienced, you wouldn't have to need to do this, but for more complex projects with more intricate pieces, I would suggest keeping this. So whatever scrap fabric remains over that you had to cut off, keep that aside, because before we start sewing, we'll have to test our thread and we'll have to test the sewing. So these are perfect for testing. And why I'm also saying keep the fabric pieces on. In our previous video, we detailed that each pattern piece has these notches marked. So with the pattern pieces on, I suggest cutting these notches already. So the only thing you do is in the notch for about 6 centimeters, just cut a little snip. So where there's two notches, cut next to each other. And then where there is one notch, you'll cut once. So I have one more pattern piece to cut out. So my fabric has been cut. I have also serged all of the edges just to make sure that the fabric doesn't fray. And I've also marked all of the panels according to the markings on the pattern sheet. So firstly, the pattern asks that we fold the facing pieces based on the fold line. We'll press them and baste the top edges of the facing pieces. So let's get that done and we'll come right back. Okay, so I have now pressed the facing pieces on panels number 1 towards the wrong side of the panel on the fold line. I have also now pinned panel pieces number 1 and 2 together, making sure that the right sides of the fabric face each other, as well as the notches on panels number 1 match up with the notches on panels number 2. What we'll then do, so the seam allowance for this pattern is 1.5 centimeters. So I will make a stitch from the top right through up until this dot marking that we have made, that we transferred from the pattern. After this, we will then pivot the fabric and we will continue to stitch upwards towards the end of the facing piece. So let's head over to the sewing machine and I'll show you how this is done. So for this project, I'll be using a standard universal needle size 80. So I'm not using the normal size 90 because the fabric is not very thick. And it helps not to tear the fabric as easily. Let's get sewing. When you start sewing, it's important to hold the back threads. And what I like to do is I like to turn the hand wheel once so that it at least enters the fabric. Then we'd go a few stitches forward and then remember to back stitch. So this at least helps that the thread at the end doesn't come undone. So as I mentioned previously, let's continue with the stitch at a 1.5 centimeter seam allowance until we reach that red marking. So let's go. So just before we reach that red marking, what I'd like to do is I turn the hand wheel until I reach the center of that marking. It just helps with a bit better accuracy. Okay, then we make sure that our needle is in the down position. So we will then lift our presser foot and we'll pivot the fabric so that it neatly faces the outward direction. We'll put the presser foot down and then we will just continue to slowly. Again, we'll turn the hand wheel so that it neatly just goes over that edge, and then we will reverse stitch again. And there we go. So let's continue doing this with the other piece and we'll come right back. Okay, so we have now stitched panels 1 and 2 at the front seams from the top up until this pivot point right through the facing. So what we're going to do now is we will cut from this corner diagonally up until we reach the seam, not cutting through the thread. What we'll then do is we will press open the seams and we will press the facing towards panel number 2. So let me get that done and I'll show you how it looks. Okay, so we have now made this incision. We have pressed the seam open. We have flipped this facing towards the panel number 2 and we have pressed it as well. Our next step is to put panels number 5 and 6 together, matching the seams. Let's quickly do that. So we have now pinned pieces 5 and 6 together, right sides facing, and we have matched the one notch. We will then again from the top to the bottom of the pants, sew at 1.5 centimeters seam allowance. Let's quickly take this over to the sewing machine. Let's do the same for the other 2 panels and we'll be right back. Okay, so now we have a nice neat seam from the top right through to the bottom. And the next step will be again pressing these seams open so that they can just lie nice and flat. So let me do that and I'll be back. So we have now pressed open the seams of panels number 5 and 6 and they are ready to be put together with the other panels. But this is all the time we have for today, guys. Thank you so much for joining me. It's been fun. Please stay tuned for the next video where we'll actually be putting together this entire pants. So I'll teach you how to properly do a crotch seam and how to neatly put together a waistband. Please don't forget to like and subscribe for more great content. See you again.